According to a recent report, even with fast food chains offering more healthy options these days, fast food as a whole is actually worse for you than it was 3 decades ago. Some menu items may appear harmless at first glance, but choosing them is honestly a bad move. They cost too much, deliver little to no nutritional value, or are simply baffling choices altogether. And if you've ever bought one, don't worry. You're definitely not alone. Now let's take a closer look at the biggest offenders. Let's kick things off with a fan favorite that tricks way more people than it should. You know the moment. It's around 11 p.m., you're mindlessly scrolling on your phone, and suddenly a huge burger ad fills the screen. The camera slowly pans over an absurd skyscraper of beef, cheese, and bacon that looks like it could feed an entire neighborhood. Your stomach immediately reacts, and for a brief, dangerous moment, ordering one feels like a genius move. Here's the part no one advertises. Those so-called monster burgers often come loaded with more than 1,500 calories, which is basically a full day's worth of food smashed into a single bun. They're stacked higher than a wedding cake, except the cake won't leave you wondering if you need a doctor afterward. The sodium alone is enough to make your blood pressure spike in protest. And let's talk about what's actually inside them. Most of these triple-deck nightmares use processed cheese that barely deserves the name, bacon that's more salt than substance, and beef patties that have been sitting under heat lamps long enough to develop their own backstory. Meanwhile, your money disappears faster than coins from a cracked piggy bank. These oversized messes usually cost between $12 and $18, cash that could easily cover real groceries to keep you fed for a couple of days. The worst part? Most people can't even finish them. You get halfway through, start feeling awful, and then spend the rest of the day questioning your decisions while your digestive system launches a full-scale rebellion. But somehow, there are fast food creations that make even less sense than stacking 3 burgers on top of each other. Walking into a restaurant and ordering pasta served inside an edible bread bowl is basically inviting a sugar crash with a generous side of regret. At some point, a group of executives must have sat around a conference table and decided, you know what people really need? Even more ways to consume flour. It's as if your hunger got mixed signals and chose to eat the packaging along with the meal. Before you even pour on the marinara, these bread bowls can clock in at more than 2,000 calories. That's more energy than many people burn during an entire day glued to a desk. The protein payoff is almost a joke, usually landing around 20 grams, which does nothing to justify the calorie overload. And the bread itself? It's often day-old, stuffed with preservatives just to keep it from collapsing under the sheer weight of the pasta. Within minutes, the inside turns soggy, forming a strange, gluey mess that's no longer quite bread and definitely not pasta. It's some unlucky hybrid that feels like food having a full-blown identity crisis. Unsurprisingly, most people never finish these monsters. You get through maybe a quarter of it before your body starts flashing warning signs. To make matters worse, the price is absurd. Typically $15 to $20 for nothing more than cheap noodles shoved into even cheaper bread. While we're on the topic of truly questionable food decisions, it's time to talk about meat that barely deserves to be called meat. Specifically, those golden nuggets fast food chains love to label as premium or all natural. The advertising makes it seem like they came from chickens that lived happier, healthier lives than most humans, raised on organic pastures and fed artisan grain. Let's pause for a reality check. Many of these nuggets are only about 40 to 50% actual chicken. Everything else is a blend of fillers, binders, and mystery substances that would probably make a chemistry teacher weep. You're essentially paying extra for chicken that doesn't even know what it's supposed to be. The breading alone is packed with more additives than a high school science lab. Here's the part that really stings. Restaurants actually charge more for these so-called premium nuggets. That means you're handing over extra cash for something that's barely half chicken. Sure, the regular nuggets aren't great either, but at least they don't pretend to be something they're not. The processing involved is enough to turn your stomach. The meat gets ground down, mixed with fillers, molded into shapes, coated in breading, partially cooked, frozen, shipped across the country, and finally reheated under heat lamps. By the time it lands on your tray, it's been through more steps than a complicated tax filing. Even kids can tell the difference between these ultra-processed nuggets and real chicken, which says a lot. When a 7-year-old can spot fake food immediately, it might be time to rethink what you're ordering. And unfortunately, chicken isn't the only protein getting this treatment. Fast food fish sandwiches feel like the ocean's personal payback for people who order without asking questions. They usually start with the absolute cheapest fish on the market, often pollock that's been processed so many times it might need its own paperwork. That fish has been altered, reshaped, and reworked to the point where it barely resembles anything that once swam. These patties are typically loaded with additives and preservatives, some of which aren't even allowed in other countries, yet somehow pass as acceptable in American fast food kitchens. The breading ends up being the most flavorful part of the sandwich, which says everything you need to know about the quality of the fish hiding underneath. Then comes the tartar sauce, essentially mayonnaise mixed with pickle juice and enough sugar to distract you from the fact that you're eating reassembled fish paste. The bun doesn't help either. It turns soggy almost immediately, like tissue paper caught in the rain. A lot of people order these sandwiches thinking they're making a smarter, healthier choice than getting a burger. Unfortunately, that's not the case. Many of these fish sandwiches actually contain more sodium than a typical burger and just as many calories, with the added risk of questionable seafood quality. Any healthy fats that would normally make fish a good option are long gone, wiped out during heavy processing along with most of the nutritional value. And to top it all off, the price is hard to justify. You're usually paying somewhere between $8 and $12 for the lowest grade fish, buried under thick breading and heavy sauces just to hide what it really is. And if mystery fish sounds bad, just wait until you take a closer look at what fast food chains are calling dairy. People pile on extra cheese like it's some magical upgrade that instantly makes any meal better. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most fast food cheese isn't even legally allowed to be labeled as cheese. It falls under categories like cheese product or processed cheese food, which is a polite way of saying it started as real cheese before science took over. This stuff is so artificial that actual cows would probably want legal representation. That bright orange color isn't the result of careful aging or craftsmanship. It comes from artificial dyes. And the texture is another dead giveaway. Real cheese melts, stretches, and bubbles when it's heated. This version just collapses into a shiny orange puddle, then firms back up into something suspiciously plastic-like once it cools. To make it worse, restaurants usually charge anywhere from 50 cents to $2 for extra cheese that costs them maybe a nickel to produce. You're shelling out premium prices for something that's basically flavored plastic. When a food item requires a chemistry background just to understand what's in it, that's probably a sign to pause and rethink your order. The ingredient list alone reads like a science textbook. Sodium phosphate, calcium phosphate, sodium citrate, sorbic acid, and artificial coloring agents. And somehow, people add this fake cheese to everything. Burgers, fries, nachos, hot dogs, you name it. They're smothering their food in processed chemicals while convincing themselves they're adding flavor. Unfortunately, dairy isn't the only category getting the artificial makeover. Those bright frozen drinks look harmless enough as they spin lazily in those flashy machines, almost like something you'd see at a carnival. But don't be fooled. These slushy sugar bombs are basically diabetes served in a cup, marketed to feel refreshing while quietly waging war on your pancreas. A large frozen lemonade from most fast food chains packs more than 100 grams of sugar. They're sweeter than your grandmother's compliments, but far more dangerous. Your blood sugar shoots up like a rocket taking off, only to crash back down with the force of a meteor. And here's the kicker. There's usually no real fruit involved at all. Most frozen lemonades rely on artificial lemon flavoring, high fructose corn syrup, and enough food dye to repaint a small car. Drinking one is like gambling with your health, except the house always wins. You're typically paying anywhere from $4 to $7 for what's essentially flavored ice, sugar water, and synthetic additives. For the same money, you could buy real lemons, ice, and actual sugar and make drinks at home that won't knock you into a sugar coma. And let's not ignore the ice itself. Those slush machines are notoriously hard to clean and often turn into bacterial playgrounds because proper maintenance is nearly impossible. At least frozen drinks don't pretend to be healthy though, unlike some menu items that try very hard to convince you they're good for you. Ordering a fried chicken salad is about as effective as going to the gym and then riding the elevator up one floor. It's pure health theater, something designed to make you feel responsible while you're quietly making the same bad choices. At the end of the day, it's just a chicken tender combo hiding behind a leafy costume. Let's look at what actually ends up in the bowl. You get a small pile of iceberg lettuce, which has roughly the nutritional impact of a paper towel, topped with chicken that's breaded and deep-fried in oil that's been reused longer than some employees have worked there. Incredibly, many of these salads pack more calories than a double cheeseburger. The real crime scene, though, is the dressing. One packet of ranch or honey mustard contains enough calories to fuel a short workout. You order vegetables and somehow walk away with a meal that's greasier than a mechanic's coveralls. And the pricing is outrageous. These salads usually run between $12 and $15, even though the ingredients might cost the restaurant around $3 total. The chicken is typically the same frozen tenders they serve in kids' meals, and the lettuce comes from bulk iceberg that costs next to nothing. Here's the final insult. You'll probably be hungry again within an hour. There's barely any real nutrition here, just fried food pretending to be health conscious. It's a meal engineered to make you feel virtuous while quietly wrecking your diet. And sadly, salads aren't the only menu items playing this trick. Fast food veggie burgers are the result of marketing teams working overtime to convince vegetarians and health-conscious customers that they're making a smart choice. In reality, these patties are packed with more chemicals than a science lab and go through more processing than a big-budget Hollywood film. Trying to read the ingredient list feels less like ordering food and more like cramming for a chemistry exam. It's as if vegetables went off to school and somehow learned all the wrong lessons. Surprisingly, many of these veggie burgers contain more sodium than a standard beef patty. They're heavily salted to cover up the fact that, without all that seasoning, they taste suspiciously like flavored cardboard. The manufacturing process alone is enough to make you rethink everything. Soybeans are isolated, chemically altered, blended with binders, pumped full of artificial flavors, dyed to resemble meat, pressed into patties, frozen solid, shipped nationwide, and finally cooked on the same grills as regular burgers. By the end, they're so artificial even plastic might feel uncomfortable. And here's the part that really stings. These imitation veggie burgers often cost more than real meat. You're paying extra for ultra-processed plant protein when you could get actual protein for less money. It's no surprise that most people try one of these once and immediately head straight back to the real thing. If you think lunch and dinner are bad, processed fast food breakfasts somehow manage to be even worse. Fast food pancakes are basically dessert-wearing pajamas, pretending to be a responsible morning meal while draining your energy before the workday even begins. They're what happens when restaurants decide breakfast should be sweeter than a birthday cake. A standard pancake platter can easily rack up more than 1,200 calories before 9 a.m. No one should need a nap immediately after breakfast, yet these meals come with exhaustion built right in. Each serving often contains more sugar than a typical candy bar, which explains why you feel wrecked shortly afterward. And none of it is fresh. The pancakes come from frozen batter, loaded with preservatives, artificial flavors, and enough chemical help to keep them shelf-stable for months. If maple trees had lawyers, they'd be filing lawsuits. The syrup isn't real maple syrup, no matter what the packet suggests. It's corn syrup mixed with fake maple flavor and caramel coloring. The butter is margarine, and the sausages are processed meat tubes stuffed with more preservatives than actual pork. The result is predictable. Most people crash within 2 hours, then spend the rest of the morning feeling sluggish, foggy, and hungry all over again. Your blood sugar shoots up, then drops hard, leaving you feeling worse than if you'd skipped breakfast altogether. And while we're on the subject of breakfast foods that aren't quite what they claim to be, let's talk about those suspicious yellow squares. Fast food breakfast sandwiches love to brag about their fresh eggs, as if they're doing you a personal favor. But the yellow slab tucked inside your English muffin is nothing like the egg sitting in your fridge at home. Most fast food eggs come from something called an egg blend, which sounds harmless until you actually read the ingredient list. When your breakfast requires stabilizers, you're no longer eating food. You're eating a science experiment. The texture alone should raise red flags. Real eggs are light, fluffy, and break apart naturally. These, on the other hand, are dense and uniform. In many places, the egg patties are cooked hours before you even place your order, then left sitting under heat lamps until someone finally buys them. By the time they reach your tray, those eggs have traveled more miles than a frequent flyer and taste just about as fresh. The processing is where things really go downhill. Real eggs are cracked open, mixed with a collection of additives, poured into molds, partially cooked, frozen, shipped out, and then reheated when you order. And here's the real insult. You're paying extra for this. A breakfast sandwich made with these processed egg products often costs more than an entire dozen of real eggs from the grocery store. Sadly, eggs aren't the only breakfast protein getting the artificial makeover. Fast food tacos are basically where honesty on the menu goes to disappear. That so-called seasoned beef filling has been processed more times than a mortgage application and contains about as much real beef as you'd expect from a place selling millions of tacos for less than $1 each. Here's a fun but unsettling fact. When some major taco chains had their meat tested, it turned out to be only about 35% actual beef. When you need math to figure out how much meat is in your meat, something has clearly gone wrong. The rest of the filling is a strange blend of oats, soy lecithin, maltodextrin, and enough anti-caking agents to keep it from sticking together. The seasoning mix brings more chemicals than flavor, and the texture doesn't help either. Real ground beef breaks apart naturally and has uneven pieces. This version has the consistency of wet sand and is just as appealing to eat. Most of these taco fillings are cooked in massive batches, prepared once, and then left sitting under heat lamps for hours. By the time it's scooped into a taco shell, you're no longer eating something that resembles real food. It's a food-like product that started as meat and lost its way. The profit margins are huge because the filling costs next to nothing to make. And unfortunately, processed beef isn't the only protein mystery lurking in fast food menus. Fast food hot dogs are like mystery novels. Except instead of solving a crime, you're trying to figure out which animal parts you're actually eating. They're made from meat trimmings, organs, and leftover bits that couldn't find a respectable place anywhere else in the food world. Just reading the ingredient list feels like opening a horror book. Mechanically separated chicken, beef scraps, pork fat, corn syrup, sodium nitrite, and enough preservatives to keep them edible well into the next century. It's basically everything left on the butcher's floor, ground up and packed into a tube. Here's how hot dogs really come to life. All those unsellable meat remnants get mashed together, heavily salted, spiced, and chemically preserved, then stuffed into synthetic casings. These casings used to be made from animal intestines, but today they're mostly plastic-based materials. One fast food hot dog can contain over half of your recommended daily sodium intake, and that's before you even add ketchup, mustard, or a side of fries. If your blood pressure monitor had feelings, it would be deeply concerned. The nitrates used to preserve these dogs have long been associated with health risks, yet they're still completely legal in processed meats. On top of that, most fast food hot dogs sit in heated water for hours before anyone orders them. They end up wrinkled, overly salty, and stuck in this unpleasant middle ground where they're neither firm nor soft. Ironically, the water they're soaking in has more flavor than the hot dogs themselves. The buns are usually stale, the condiments are questionable at best, and you're paying anywhere from $5 to $8 for processed meat scraps in casing form. For the same money, you could buy decent hot dogs and fresh buns at the grocery store and actually know what you're eating. What really gets me, though, is the audacity. Fast food places charge premium prices for what's essentially the lowest quality meat product available. The markup is ridiculous, considering these things cost around 50 cents to make and sell for up to 8 times that amount. Most people finish a fast food hot dog feeling underwhelmed and slightly nauseous. Your body knows when it's been fed garbage, even if clever marketing managed to trick your brain. And sadly, mystery meat isn't the only overpriced disappointment hiding on fast food menus. Loaded fries are the fast food industry's favorite trick for turning something that costs about 30 cents to make into an $8 purchase, simply by piling on toppings that maybe add another 50 cents to their costs. It's basically daylight robbery, just dressed up with cheese sauce. The process always starts the same way. Ordinary frozen fries that have been sitting under heat lamps longer than most people wait for public transportation. Then comes a generous pour of that fake cheese we already talked about, followed by a few bacon bits that taste more like salt than pork, and maybe a sad sprinkle of green onions that have clearly seen better days. What you're really buying is a potato dressed up in costume jewelry and sold at luxury prices. The portions look impressive at first glance, but most of that volume is air and cheap toppings. Those $8 loaded fries usually contain maybe $2 worth of actual ingredients, and that's being generous. The fries themselves are often the thin, low-quality kind that turn soggy the second anything wet touches them. Most loaded fry combos rack up over 900 calories and enough sodium to de-ice a small parking lot. Nutritionally, you're getting almost nothing. aside from whatever vitamins manage to survive multiple rounds of frying and reheating, which isn't much. The cheese comes from a pump, not a cow, and it shows. The worst part is how quickly everything goes downhill. Before you're halfway through, the toppings are already cold and congealed. It's like watching your money evaporate in real time while your food actively gets worse. The cheese hardens into something plastic-like, the bacon turns chewy, and the fries underneath dissolve into soggy potato mush. Here's the real insult. These loaded fries often cost more than actual entrees. You could order a burger, a chicken sandwich, or even a small pizza for less money and walk away with more real food. But restaurants know exactly what they're doing. Anything that looks Instagram-worthy suddenly justifies a higher price, even if it tastes like regret smothered in cheese sauce. The marketing is carefully designed to make you feel like you're getting a deal. Words like loaded, supreme, and ultimate sound impressive, but all they really mean is overpriced. In reality, you're paying restaurant prices for food that's barely above gas station quality. The profit margins are so high, it's basically printing money out of potatoes. Most people snap a few photos, eat about half, and then sit there wondering why they paid so much for glorified fast food. The rest of the fries slowly get colder and greasier while you question both your life choices and your spending habits. And speaking of overpriced liquid disappointments, let's move on to those thick drinks. Fast food milkshakes are what you get when someone decides ice cream isn't sweet enough and slaps on artificial flavors, extra sugar, and a price tag that would make your grandmother question the state of the economy. These drinks barely deserve to be called milkshakes and definitely don't qualify as smart purchases. There was a time when milkshakes came in real glass cups and were made with actual ice cream. Those days are long gone. Now you're getting an artificial ice cream product blended with high fructose corn syrup, fake flavorings, and enough thickening agents to force the mixture through a straw. It's like drinking dessert soup that forgot what it was supposed to be. A large fast food milkshake can contain more sugar than 3 candy bars, plus a regular soda combined. We're talking 60 to 80 grams of sugar in one cup, enough to send your pancreas into overdrive and put your dentist's kids through college. Your blood sugar spikes so hard it could probably power a small generator. And the ice cream itself isn't even real. It's a soft-serve mix filled with air stabilizers and artificial flavors. The strawberry in a strawberry shake has never met an actual strawberry. The chocolate comes from artificial cocoa flavoring, and even the vanilla is fake extract mixed with chemicals. The machines cranking these out are basically money printers. You're paying anywhere from $5 to $8 for what's essentially sugar water thickened into milkshake form. For the same price, you could buy a half-gallon of real ice cream and make far better shakes at home. The markup is outrageous. These shakes cost the restaurant almost nothing to produce. The soft serve mix runs about 50 cents per shake. The syrups maybe another 20. And yet you're charged $8 for a cup of artificial everything. The profit margins would make loan sharks jealous. Here's how it usually plays out when you order one. The shake arrives looking nothing like the photo, half melted around the edges and already separating into strange layers. The straw clogs because it's too thick. Then suddenly it turns watery as it melts. Most people don't even finish them. You drink about half before your body starts flashing warning signs, then spend the next hour feeling nauseous while the rest melts into a puddle of regret. Your teeth ache, your stomach churns, and you're left wondering why liquid candy ever sounded like a good idea. But all of those overpriced individual items don't even come close to the biggest fast food trap of them all: the combo meal. This is fast food's greatest illusion, carefully engineered to make you feel like you're winning while you're actually paying more money to feel worse afterward. It's American excess wrapped in the comforting language of value. Here's how the trick plays out. They list the burger, fries, and drink separately, showing prices that conveniently add up to around $13. Then they swoop in with the deal, offering the combo for $11.50, and suddenly you feel smart for saving money. What they don't tell you is that those individual prices were inflated on purpose to make the combo look like a steal. You walked in expecting lunch and walked out carrying enough salt to prep for a snowstorm. A large combo meal can easily top 2,000 calories, which is more than most people should be eating in an entire day. The soda alone contains enough sugar to knock you into a fog, and the supersized fries are swimming in more oil than most people use for cooking all week. The psychology behind combo meals is both clever and slightly sinister. The upgrade is framed as such a tiny price jump that you feel foolish saying no. It's only 50 cents more for double the food, they say, conveniently leaving out that it's also double the calories, double the sodium, and double the regret. The markup on these combos is outrageous. The actual cost to produce a large combo meal is probably around $3, yet you're being charged anywhere from $15 to $18. The soda costs them roughly 20 cents, the fries maybe 60 cents, and the burger around $2 in ingredients. That's it. And most people can't even finish these oversized meals. You'll get through maybe 60% before your body starts pushing back. Then spend the rest of the time lugging around leftovers while feeling guilty about wasting food and uncomfortable from eating too much. The fries turn cold and sad, the drink gets watery, and you're left with a half-eaten burger that looked way better in the commercial. The worst part is what these combos do to your hunger cues. All the processing, artificial flavors, and chemical additives confuse your body. You end up feeling stuffed but not satisfied, which somehow makes you crave even more food later on. And there it is. 15 ways. Fast food companies convince you to pay more for meals that leave you feeling worse. Your body and your wallet both deserve better than this overpriced garbage.